to this Autovista Group Insights episode, and today we're going to be talking about the seemingly rapidly advancing field of autonomous technology. Today I am joined by Autovista Group's Chief Economist, Christof Engelskirchen, and Daily Brief journalist, Tom Geggus. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, and looking forward to speaking to you guys. Hi.
Yeah, good to be back as ever. Looking forward to talking over some autonomy updates.
Now, the thought of a driverless car might stir up some excitement amongst consumers, but in reality there are many steps on the long path to full autonomy. However, we do have some basic systems in place today that can be considered autonomous, and some that we might even take for granted in vehicles. So I guess the first thing to think about is, how can autonomy be defined in today's automotive market?
Well, of course, we need to think about what autonomy is before we start talking about self-driving cars, because I think there's an important distinction between self-driving capabilities and autonomous capabilities, and then fully autonomous vehicles, because often when people think about fully autonomous cars or autonomous vehicles, we're thinking of what's known as level 5 technology, which is quite a bit different from assisted. So let's review. We've got the SAE, or the Society of Automotive Engineers. They have 6 levels of autonomous capabilities. They see from 0 to 5. It goes from no automation to driver assistance. Then you've got partial automation, conditional automation, high automation, and then lastly, of course, you've got full automation. Now, back in December 2019, SAE actually published something quite similar. They had 3 different levels. They separated into assisted driving, automated driving, and autonomous driving. So it really depends upon where we're thinking about these technologies and how they're being used by the driver. Is it simply a case of a lane control system when they're being used on the highway, or are we thinking quite a bit further down the road of a vehicle that's fully capable of looking after itself from driveway to destination and back again?
I mean, thanks, Tom. I mean, for that recap of the different taxonomies, I guess. What I've found in discussions, but also, by reviewing this over and over again, is that it's quite a technical, some would even call it theoretical, discrimination, and you also have people still having different interpretations of what each level actually means. If I'm asked to define it, I would probably look at it more from a use case perspective. So we have, on the one hand, those systems or driver assistance systems that intervene, when the driver is driving a car, and radar, camera-based distance control, or active lane assist are examples of such technologies. And the interesting bit here is that we do have performance differences around these features, and they are quite big, those performance differences still. And you will hear a lot of people talk about level 2, level 2 plus, level 3. But all of these systems are here to improve safety. They are potentially providing some comfort and some convenience, right? So we have those assisted drivers or assistance systems, driver assistance systems on the one hand, and then the other side of autonomy, I would consider are systems that would really disrupt the mobility use case, because you can create a system where the driver is out of the equation. And that's the second type of autonomy, as I would define it. I mean, again, so the autonomy means that the driver can be taken out of the car, either forever or for certain routes or in certain situations. And for that type of autonomous driving, there must not be any performance differences between manufacturers, between cars, but a very high standard of performance must be met by all cars that are driving in that way.
Of course, the minute we're seeing a lot of OEMs, a lot of manufacturers talk about self-driving capabilities and technologies, and I think a lot of what they've been aiming for are the level 3 systems. Although, of course, you've had different varying levels of success around the world, in part because of different legal structures. In May, of course, Audi announced it won't be featuring a level 3 system in the new A8, as it planned to only a few years earlier. And then of course, it's said that the legal systems just aren't in place. We can't run this technology with the law being the way it is currently. And then you've actually had challenges to certain OEMs. So more recently, you had Tesla being banned from using an advertisement for its autopilot system in Germany because it leads people, apparently, to believing that the system itself was fully autonomous, which was decided by court in Munich. Really, again, we're looking at how we're defining these systems, and it's really important to recognise that fully autonomous, they're not always the same thing. It's what a vehicle is capable of.
Because this is the thing, isn't it? At the moment, people think that they can kick back, they can relax, they can sleep, they can do some work while they're driving along in their autonomous car. But there's a point at the moment where the car has to alert the driver if there's a problem.
The car is constantly alerting the driver for problems, for anything that is a driver assisting system. There's a constant, the car is always saying something's not working. Sometimes it's raining too much, sometimes the lanes are not visible. So you get a lot of error messages, and you can cope with it because you are barely talking about level 1 or 2 here. Once we are talking about a system where you're allowed to fall asleep or whatever you do when you're not engaged. Yeah, you can work, you can watch a video, you can listen to music. We are leading that famous level 3 autonomous discussion. So you're basically describing a car that drives pretty well autonomously, but it can alert you at any time, at any point in time, about you needing to intervene. And I think there are two issues with such a system. First of all, there is, as I said before, there is no performance standard here. As a driver, you will continue to have to assume responsibility for what the car's action means, for you and also for others. And courts, for example, they will decide whether you reacted fast enough upon the car alerting you that it needs your support. And maybe you have missed a tech inspection by a couple of days. And on top, but I mean, this is personal, but I mean, it's not just me that believes that, but it's not something I've done plenty of research on. But I would personally not find it particularly comforting to be falling asleep in a car that may alert me at any point in time that a situation is now upon us that the car cannot control anymore. And it's rather a scary thought. I'd rather be in a car that has a great driver assistance system, which once in a while, messes things up. But because I'm in control, I'm looking at the streets, then it's not so much of a problem.
I think it does all come back to this issue of safety, which is what really an autonomous system has to be. It has to be capable of driving to a good level as a human would, or even better. If there's anything below that, then you've missed the point of autonomy of a self-driving system. And I think there's also a level of driver comfortability. If, as you say, Christof, the driver isn't comfortable sitting in a vehicle that they're not confident in, they're not going to use that technology, they're not going to use the system. So they need to know that the car's going to look after them, that the safety system that's been programmed has been done well enough to look after them, so that when they're using it, they can rest and lay back. Otherwise, it's not fully autonomous. I found it interesting, actually, that NCAP recently carried out a second series of highway-assisted tests. So we're talking about vehicles that are less capable, or certainly have good assistance systems by today's standards, but again, not self-driving as we traditionally think of it. And this included 10 cars. You had the Audi Q8, the BMW Series 3, and of course one of the new Teslas, Tesla Model 3, even the Volkswagen Passat, Volvo V60, about 10 different models. And highway assist helps the driver to maintain speed. It keeps a safe distance from the car in front, and it keeps the vehicle in the centre of the lane by using intelligent adaptive cruise control and lane centering. But of course, putting a system like this through NCAP, a kind of recognised body that will measure how well these systems work, is important for the consumer, because they can see, yes, I recognise this body, I know them from all their crash videos, and I know that if they've carried out these tests, they're going to be reliable, they're going to be good. And I found it quite interesting, actually, that 3 of the cars in the premium segment that NCAP tested, the Mercedes-Benz GLE, the BMW 3 Series and the Audi Q8, were rated very good. they achieve a good balance between offering a high level of driver assistance but keeping the driver engaged and control of the driving task. So at all times the driver would have been capable of taking back over should they need to. It's not about just letting them fall asleep or read the newspaper or whatever. In contrast, Tesla's pioneering role in the self-driving technology was reflected in its scores for vehicle assistance and safety backup, but its autopilot system, as I mentioned earlier, as Euro NCAP has said, the system does little to keep the driver engaged. Its distinct steering strategy gives the impression that either the car is driving itself or the driver has full control, and the system's more authoritarian than cooperative, which I found quite interesting. So it's really going to be down to consumers trusting the car at the end of the day and the systems they're in.
If the system pretends to be so good, really good, the human brain has a tendency to wander off to do other things because we're not capable of monitoring a nearly perfect system. That's not a fun job to do, and that's why in trains, for example, I think every 30 seconds or something, people have to just push a button, to tell the train that they're still awake and ready to take over if something happens. So, and even in these fully autonomous and very controlled environments, you still require a system that wakes you up once in a while. So if we're talking about autonomy in the sense that you can really do something completely different and you don't need to come back to the car when it alerts you, but you have, let's say, a minute to wake up or to get yourself ready. Maybe you're not even sitting in the seat. So that's a very different world, and I think that's where the big difference in autonomy, or this is probably a discussion about around 30 years of time, until that suddenly switches over for passenger car.
So that's all we've got time for in this part, but we are going to be discussing use cases and infrastructure in another Autovista Group Insights episode on autonomous vehicles. For now, I'd like to thank Christof and Tom for joining me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Autovista Group YouTube channel and receive notifications, especially for part 2 when it comes out in a week or so's time. You can also stay up to date with our news stories and industry insights by signing up to the Autovista Group Daily Brief, details now on screen, and by following us on Twitter and on LinkedIn. But for now, thanks for joining us.